Hey fifth graders, welcome to your next session in reading. I'm Mrs. Passano and I'm going to be helping you out today. So all you're going to need to get going is your fancy Unit 4 reading packet, pencil, and access to YouTube. So for homework last night, you guys were supposed to jot down your book club books and look at things that you learned while the main character was learning them. Hopefully you had something. I know there's a lot, even if it's a little detail or a big detail, we're always learning while we read. So before we begin today's lesson, I need you to do some prior classwork. I would like you to go on to YouTube, or where we gave you the links your teachers did in that Google Doc, and your job is to make sure that you have heard the read-alouds for chapter 1, 2, and 3, that's all 3 of them, in The Thief of Always. So why don't you pause the video here, go listen to them, and then come back, and I'll be able to help you out. All right, welcome back. Hopefully those chapters were very interesting for you. So now I'm going to have you guys get out your pink packet as I fumble mine. Get this bad boy out, and then why don't you turn back to page 6 for me, please. It should have a line on it, and it should say session 2. Now, today we're going to talk about signposts and what a signpost is. Now, if you're like me, I thought of the side of the freeway right away with the signs with the restaurants that say what restaurants are on that exit or what gas stations are on that exit. They come in handy a lot of the times. So signposts in reading are typically there for you to know that there's learning that's going to be happening for the main character. So that should be your alert to kind of hone in and see what they're learning, because you're learning it too, and that's super important. So if you see in the box in the middle of the page there, and don't mind my writing all over, it says signposts of learning moments for characters. Okay, and then you see those 3 bullet points there. Those are different examples of signposts and when they might happen. So for example, a direct question and answer, I mean, that's when the main character is just blatantly asking what's going on, what's happening, yada, 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 and they're getting that response back. That's them learning and you're learning through their shoes kind of as well. The second bullet point there is explanations of stories. So maybe you're getting someone's background, or the character's learning about the history of the place, different things like that. And then number 3 is unfamiliar experiences. That's kind of what Harvey's going through right now with this holiday house. Obviously it's unfamiliar to him. Everything is new, and he's getting used to that. So we're learning through him that way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 4 to you. You haven't read this yet, so I need you to be sure that you're listening. And you're going to be extra alert to see what Harvey is learning while we're learning it. So look for the signposts, because you're going to catch a lot, okay? So when we left off, Harvey in chapter 3 was just about to go to sleep in the holiday house. So now we're going to get started on chapter 4. The sun came to wake him soon after dawn. A straight white dart of light laid on his lids. He sat up with a start, wondering for a moment what bed this was, what room, what house. Then his memories of the previous day returned, and he realized that he had slept through from late afternoon to early morning. The rest had strengthened him. He felt energetic, and with a whoop of pleasure, he jumped out of bed and got dressed. The house was more welcoming than ever today. The flowers Mrs. Griffin had set on every table were still singing with color. The front door stood open, and sliding down the gleaming banisters, Harvey raced out onto the porch to inspect the morning. A surprise awaited him. The trees, which had been heavy with leaves the previous afternoon, had shed their canopies. There were new tiny buds on each branch and twig, as though it was the first day of spring. "Another day, another dollar," said Wendell, ambling around the corner of the house. "What does that mean?" said Harvey. "It's what my father used to say all the time. Another day, another dollar. He's a banker, my dad, Wendell Hamilton II, and me, I'm Wendell Hamilton III. How'd you know?" "Yeah, lucky guess. I'm Harvey." "Yeah, I know. Do you like tree houses?" "Never had one." Wendell pointed up at the tallest tree. There was a platform perched among the branches with a rudimentary house built on top of it. "I've been working up there for weeks," said Wendell, "but I can't get it furnished alone. You want to come help me?" "Sure, but I've got to get something to eat first." "Go eat, I'll be around." Harvey headed back inside and found Mrs. Griffin setting out a breakfast fit for a prince. There was milk spilt on the floor, with a cat and a tail hooked like a question mark, lapping it up. "Clue Cat?" he said. "Yes, indeed," Mrs. Griffin said fondly. "He's the wicked one." Clue Cat looked up as if he knew he was being talked about. Then he jumped onto the table and searched among the plates of pancakes and waffles for something more to eat. "Can he do whatever he likes?" Harvey said, watching the cat sniff this and that. "I mean, does nobody control him?" "Ah, well, we all have somebody watching over us, don't we?" Mrs. Griffin replied. "Whether we like it or not. Now eat. You've got some wonderful times ahead of you." Now, I want you to pause for a second and think about what Mrs. Wendell said. She said that we all have somebody watching over us. Knowing this place, this new environment, do you think Harvey should have taken that as more of a warning or a clue that something in this world is up, so to speak? So keep an eye on that. That was one of our signposts. Harvey didn't need a second invitation. He dug into his second meal at the holiday house with even more appetite than he had the first, and then he headed out to meet the day. Oh, what a day it was! The breeze was warm and it smelled of the green scent of growing things. The perfect sky was full of swooping birds. He sauntered through the grass, his hands in his pockets, like the Lord of all surveyed, calling to Wendell as he approached the trees. "Can I come up?" "If you got a head for heights," Wendell dared him. The ladder creaked as he climbed, but he made it to the platform without missing a step. Wendell was impressed. "Not bad for the new boy," he said. "We had 2 kids here that didn't even get halfway up." "Where'd they go?" "Back home, I suppose. Kids come and go, you know." Harvey peered out through the branches, upon which every bud was bursting. "You can't see much, can you?" he said. "I mean, there's no sign of town at all." "Who cares?" Wendell said. "It's just gray out there anyways." "And it's sunny here?" Harvey said, staring down at the wall of misty stones that divided the grounds of the house from the other outside world. "How's that possible?" Wendell's answer was the same again. "Who cares?" he said. I don't care. And now we're going to start building, or what?" They spent the next 2 hours working on the treehouse, descending a dozen times to dig through the timbers heaped beside the orchard, looking for boards to finish up their repairs. By noon, they not only found enough wood to fix the roof, but they had each found a friend. Harvey liked Wendell's bad jokes and the "who cares," which found its way into every sentence, and Wendell seemed just as happy to have Harvey's company. "You're the first kid here who's been real fun," he said. "What about Lulu?" "What about her?" "Isn't she any fun?" "She's okay when she first arrived," Wendell added. "I mean, she's been here for months, so she's kind of showed me the place, but she's gotten weird the last couple of days. I see her sometimes wandering around like she's sleepwalking with a blank expression on her face." "She's probably going crazy," Harvey said. "Her brain is turning to mush." "Do you know about that stuff?" Wendell wanted to know, his face lighting up with ghoulish delight. So that's where I'm going to stop for chapter 4 today. But I want you to look at, when they talk about Lulu walking around, they kind of let you know how long she's been there for, a couple of months. So that's something we learned about Lulu through Harvey talking to Wendell. And then the other thing we talked about was Mrs. Griffin and people watching over them. And I thought I caught one more, but I'm putting myself on the spot here. Oh, well, when Harvey, when Harvey said that, Wendell said, "Not bad for the new boy," he said, "We had 2 kids here that couldn't even get halfway up." And Harvey asked, "Where did they go?" "Back home, I suppose. Kids come and go, you know." So my question is, where are these kids going and why are they going would be my question. And hopefully we learn that through Harvey. All right, so for your homework today, I want you to maintain reading your book club book, and you should have divided up the chapters, or your teacher should have told you what chapters to read. I know for my kids, I just told them to divide it up amongst the number of days. So you're going to continue reading your book club book. You're also going to read 30 minutes of a free read choice, and make sure you're filling out your yellow reading log sheet. Now, while you're reading your book club book, I want you to go in your Google Doc or your Google Slide if you're a Pass No kiddo, and I want you to document certain things. And this will be typed for you by your teacher, but I want you to focus on list any places in your book club book with the page numbers where you noticed a signpost. Now, your examples could be when the main character asks a question and finds an answer, something we learned, or when a main character listens to explanations, or you have any kind of new learning experience. For example, if I was typing this as a very good 5th grade kid, and Thief of Always was my book club book, I would write down the 3 points that we mentioned, that Mrs. Griffin mentioned something weird about everybody's watching us. Was that a warning for Harvey? Or, you know, does that mean that people within the house or within the grounds are spying on you? I don't know. I got a creepy feeling about it. We could also talk about Lulu and how we know she's been there for a really long time and she's starting to get mopey and she just kind of walks. I think they said like she's tired all the time with how much time has been passing. And we could also talk about the kids going and coming and we don't really know where they go, or that everywhere around the Holiday House is gray, but the Holiday House is sunny, different things that we're learning through Harvey. So your main character, it doesn't have to be a huge moment of like, oh my gosh, this is what I learned, stop the book, this is crazy. It could be little tidbits of information. So don't get discouraged if you don't have a major moment in your chapter. Sometimes these things are very slow and it's just characters talking to one another. The Thief of Always does move very quickly, so just know that your book club book might be different and there's nothing wrong with that. But write down any new learning. So for example, if I was doing the Chronicles of Narnia with Lucy and Mr. Tumnus, I would write down that, you know, he showed her that there was a war back in the day in Narnia and times were not so hot. So what's resolved from there? Harry Potter, could be him finding out he was a wizard. When Hagrid tells him, sorry if that's a spoiler, shouldn't be, or different things like that. So it doesn't have to be anything, you know, overwhelmingly important. So, but just know they do add up to be more important in the end. I hope that makes sense, kiddos. So this was your Friday reading lesson, TGIF. Believe it or not, you're starting spring break next week. So just know you won't have any reading assignments for spring break. So if you don't panic, if you tune in Monday and there's no YouTube video, teachers are on spring break and you deserve to take some time off as well. I hope you stay healthy and I hope you have a lot of fun with your families, or at least the weather. I know most of you aren't traveling, but hopefully we can have some fun. I plan on doing something. I don't know, anything. So, all right, have fun and we'll see you when we come back from spring break.